I'm Scott McDonald. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Taylor Corporation. I grew up in Cloquet, Minnesota, which is a town of 11,000 people outside of Duluth. My parents were both public school teachers. I had an uncle that was a Chief Financial Officer of Minnesota Power. And my dad and my uncle had a family business for 40 years in Cloquet that was kind of a big small town business, renting video, heavy equipment. There was a quick oil change and mini storage. So I spent my childhood working at that business, and we had it until just before the pandemic. We sold it. To be honest with you, I couldn't wait to leave Cloquet. I think it was a great place to grow up. I think I look back maybe now with more fondness around all of the time that we spend in the Boundary Waters. Like, we have a family cabin outside of Grand Marais. I think it's probably because I spent so much time living elsewhere that I came more to appreciate northern Minnesota than maybe I did at the time. Sometimes you have to leave to come back. Sometimes you have to leave to better appreciate what you had. But I probably have a deeper fondness for the Boundary Waters particularly than Cloquet as such. But my childhood was kind of wrapped up there because we spent a lot of time there when I was little, camping, fishing, etc. They were both public school teachers. My mother grew up in North Dakota in a little town called Edgeley, which is outside of Jamestown. My dad grew up in Duluth. 3 of my 4 grandparents did not finish high school. Only one of them finished high school, and of the 4, only 2 finished middle school. My mother's parents were farmers, immigrants, German-Russian immigrants. So she came from the farm and moved to Minnesota and met my dad, and I spent my whole early years in Cloquet. Because they were teachers, they had summers off, so we would always go on long kind of trips in the U.S., road trips. We spent a lot of time in the Boundary Waters. My dad was always a really avid, particularly fisherman. So that doesn't particularly interest me, but we spent a lot of time boating and camping those summers, or road trips all over the U.S. I think it's true that it was very much about education, and I suppose integrity, being a good person, treating others with respect. But because they were both teachers, and perhaps because their parents had not been very educated, that was a big part of, I think, what they instilled in me. I spent a lot of time working at this family business. I had another job, so I was really into piano at the time, and when I was in high school, I was a church organist. So I would work at this family business, but also play organ in a Lutheran church in Cloquet on the weekends, and then I did a lot of funerals, weddings, that kind of thing, playing the organ. Aside from that, I sang in the choir, and there was a show choir that I also sang in high school. That was probably the main activity outside of this family business. I was a foreign exchange student in Belgium, so I feel like that was actually a very important experience for me.
How did that happen?
Also, I have no explanation. I was just always interested in travel, and I was always interested in living abroad, and I do not know where that came from. Other than maybe when I look at my grandparents, they were either immigrants or the children of immigrants, so there were all with these stories about where they had come from that I suppose I found really interesting and kind of ignited my imagination. So in high school, I wanted to be a foreign exchange student. I actually wanted to go abroad for a year, and my parents, it was like the piano. They didn't really think that I was as interested in it as maybe I was, so they said I could start with going for a summer. And so I applied with AFS, American Field Service. And actually, I think I said I would go anywhere in the world, and they put me in Belgium with this family that was maybe 30 miles outside of Bruges, so Dutch-speaking Belgium. And I loved it. I think that also was something that led to other things later. They mainly spoke English to me. I was quite keen to speak Dutch, but of course it's summer, so you're not going to school. But they were both the the couple were both teachers as well, so they had the summer off. So we traveled a lot. I mean, just around northern France. We went to London. My mother had a cousin who was living in Cologne at the time, so we went to Cologne in Germany. So like we went to the Netherlands, a number of places around, not that far from where they lived, but that I had obviously never been to. I'd never taken a plane before I went to Belgium. I think it's one thing to go to a different country and you kind of observe from afar. It's a whole different thing when you're living with a family and see how do they do things, what do they eat, how do they organize their time, what are they interested in doing when they have extra time. All of that was just endlessly fascinating to me, I think. I'm still in touch with that family. I mean, they're probably for the first 20, 25 years, I saw them almost every year because a lot of that period I lived in Europe, so I would often go to visit them. I mean, it was a very short trip from Paris. So I still have a lot of contact with them. They've been here several times. So then I went to St. Olaf, and I was very interested from the beginning in foreign languages. So, but in my high school, they only had German and Spanish. So I took German for a couple of years and I liked it fine, but I really wanted to learn French. And so when I went to St. Olaf, I declared a major in economics and French. They didn't have a major in accounting, so they had a concentration in accounting, and then I did summer courses almost every summer, I think, so that I could have the courses I needed to take the CPA exam. So it was really like a triple major in economics, accounting, and French. But I started from, the first French class, which I look at as a big achievement. I mean, to learn a foreign language becomes more difficult the older you get, obviously. I mean, you learn very easily as a child, but I was not exposed to any of that when I was a kid. So started from ground zero in college, and I loved it. I was obsessed with it. At the time, I would have said I was going to be a French professor. And in part, maybe that's because my parents were teachers. I mean, that's kind of what I knew, but I also knew that I needed to have other skills. And I had a lot of exposure to this family business, and my uncle, who was very involved in my life because of the family business, was a CFO. So I always viewed at the time the economics and the accounting as a kind of backup plan, but I also genuinely really enjoyed it. I liked the logic of it. It was very practical. I graduated with this kind of triple major, but at the time, even when I left college, I was going to be a French professor. So I leave college, and I went on to do a master's degree in French at Middlebury College, which is in Vermont. But because I really viewed my future at the time, I mean, you're still quite young when you're leaving college, right? As going into academia, I wanted to finish my CPA exam, even though I didn't think at the time I would use it. I was going to use it at all. So I sat for the CPA exam, and then I went to do my master's program. And I realized I loved it. The master's program I loved. I did most of the coursework in France. But sometime during this master's program, I realized I didn't want to teach, that I just loved the language. I loved traveling. I loved France. I loved Paris specifically. But I was very engaged with this master's program. I mean, in part because it was in Paris. And I think at the time, even though I knew I was going to change direction, it was very important to me to do the work well and to be proud of what I had done in this master's program. So I actually did very well. And then at the time, so now I have a master's degree in French and this undergraduate degree in economics, accounting, and French. And so then I was looking for a job in Minneapolis in finance and accounting. And the French people found interesting, but not a lot of practical applications until I found Carlson Companies. And they were in the process of merging one of their companies with a subsidiary of a large publicly traded French company. And so all of a sudden it had very practical applications because they had no one there that spoke French. I mean, it was a very unusual situation because you have a big but Midwestern privately held company merging part of their operation with a very large, very French public company. So that was very interesting and very much relied on language skills and all of these other kind of finance, accounting, business skills. So I worked at Carlson Companies in Minneapolis for 2 years, maybe 3, and they asked me to move to Paris actually to work in this joint venture that they had created with this French company. And I was there for more or less 10 years. And that was very much a French environment. I was the only English-speaking person that worked in the office for many years. French was the language that we used for business. I would not have been able to be successful there, I think, if I hadn't had the language skill. I lived in different places over time, but I lived in 2 or 3 different districts of Paris. Office was in a very close suburb to Paris, so I would just take the metro from wherever I lived to the office. I traveled a lot even at that time, so I kind of grew up professionally through internal audit and compliance. And the company had operations in 45 countries. So I was living in Paris, but I was traveling a lot all over the world at the time. So I had kind of grown up professionally in Europe through internal audit and compliance. And I needed more operational experience. So they actually created a role for me to come back to the US in a kind of controllership role for what they called Americas, because the company was organized geographically. So it was North, Central, and South America. And that's what caused me to come back to the US. But I wasn't there for long. I was probably here for 4 or 5 years. And then because of all the international experience, they asked me to move to Singapore. So I spent 5 years in Singapore as the CFO of our Asia Pacific operations. I left CWT. I went on a 2-week holiday to Greece. I came back from Greece and I thought it's going to take me I was a senior vice president at the time that I left. So I thought it's going to take me 18 months to find a new role. So I was doing some networking, and the person who was in William Longwell's role before William was somebody that I knew through Oracle forums. And I had coffee with her. I think the week that I came back from that vacation. So this is 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, let's say, after I left. And she said, I looked at your resume. I sent it to our CEO, so Charlie. He wants to meet you. And I said, I'd love to meet him, but actually I was planning to go abroad again because I thought the process was going to take 18 months, so I may as well take another few weeks, because when in my life am I going to be able to do this? So I was going to Italy for a few weeks. And I said, well, I'd love to talk to him. I don't know when he's available. I'm going to Italy. And she said, oh no, he wants to meet you this morning. So I met with Charlie. Suffice to say, like from the first meeting I had with Charlie to the point where I had negotiated and accepted the position was not 48 hours. So initially I came to run the finance components of the Horizon Transformation Project. And then shortly thereafter, I was promoted to Chief Financial Officer. But it was the transformation project that brought me here in the first place. So that was part of the work I did at my previous company. We did a finance transformation. And so I have a strong interest in technology-enabled transformation. And so a big part of the appeal to me of coming here was the ability to leverage all of that experience and make a really significant impact here. I think it starts with feeling comfortable and identifying with the mission and the values of the company. And I think that is very true. It's a very easy environment where everyone wants everyone else to be successful. I think it's not political in that sense. That has been really refreshing to me, and I really enjoy that. And it's the willingness of the company to take what is a very well-capitalized balance sheet and invest it in making sure we have a foundation for the future, which comes back to the transformation project. I find it very refreshing how nimble and agile, let's say, the company are. There's no bureaucracy. I make a distinction between governance and bureaucracy. So if we have a good idea and we think that we need to put it into action, I would say there are many, many examples I could give you where at other companies or at the, in my own experience, I would have had to make a presentation to my superior. I would have taken that presentation to a board committee. I would then have taken that presentation to the full board. And here you can have a conversation with Charlie and Glenn and it's done in 5 minutes. That is astonishing, frankly. I think people don't understand how unique that set of circumstances is. And you combine that with the fact that it is very long-term focused and well-capitalized. It makes a lot of things possible and to do them in a very efficient way that would not be the case elsewhere. Travel. We have a family cabin in the Boundary Waters, so I like going there. Going there with my dad and my brother over 4th of July, for example. Entertaining, cooking, to the extent I have time. I play chess with my dad. I suppose that's a pleasure. I like to read. Please don't ask me the last book I read. I don't have a lot of time. Probably that, spending time with friends. I was at my former company for 25, 26 years, and most of that time I spend a significant amount of time traveling internationally. And whenever I have spare time, I go abroad on holiday. I book the hotels. I do some reading and research to know what I think will be interesting and maybe make a list of that. I would make some bookings if there's something that otherwise I'll wait hours and hours in line. So I would reserve something like that ahead of time. I mean, if you go to Rome and you want to go to the Vatican, you have to, that kind of thing. But other than that, I just wing it. To wake up every day and figure out what you want to do. People, I think, often limit themselves to what they think they can do because of the difficulty of communicating in foreign languages. I think that for the most part, you can go anywhere and learn a few words and point at things and use Google Translate and gesticulate and you get where you need to go. So to me, the advice is just to not consider places off limits because people will find that they're difficult. I think you find a way. And generally, people are helpful.